Anticipating everyone to have the chance to hear it and then.
Everyone, it's 6 o'clock and I'm calling to order our special board meeting for the Franklin County Community School Corporation Board of Trustees. The purpose of this meeting is to have the presentation of the democratic study done. I believe Tammy will introduce our guest.
Yes, join me in welcoming Mr. Kibben. He's been here before. Gosh, it's been what, 2015 maybe? 16?
Yes, at least 8 years ago now.
So he traveled. He said he was at Westfield last night and Huntington earlier in the week, and tomorrow he flies home. So we're his last stop on this trip, this round through Indiana. But he has put together this presentation. I know I've shared it with all my administrators as well as the board. So if they have questions during the presentation, are they free to ask that, or would you rather wait till the end?
Prefer to wait towards the end because usually the answer's on the next slide.
Gotcha.
Got it.
All right.
So,
What's on the
thanks, Tammy, President, ladies and gentlemen of the board. Yes, this is indeed, we've set a company record this time. 14 school districts in 14 days. This has got to be about 2,000th board meeting I've done in my career. So just two things I want to point out before I go over the forecast results. 2 points here. Number one, don't let Rock Hill, South Carolina fool you. I don't have a southern accent. I was born and raised in Fort Wayne. Went to Carroll High School. Graduated in Northwest Allen. Used to be Indiana State demographer for about 6 years back in the 80s and 90s. My doctoral dissertation was on Indiana demographics. So, and someone up at East Allen asked last week at their, I think about 85 Indiana school districts what I've done over my career. So know the state very well, and again, been down here before, the uniqueness of this part of the state. Secondly, these are forecasts. They are not a projection. A projection is where you take a variable, usually year-to-year survivorship, second to third, third to fourth, over a 5-year period, create an algorithm, and then take the results of that to literally project into the future. It's easy, it's quick, it's cheap, and up until about the 1990s, about all you had for enrollment research. The problem with the projection, though, is the only way it can be correct is what's happened the last 5 years replicates itself over the next 5 and 10. And I don't know about anybody here. I hope we don't see the last 5 years again anytime in my lifetime. So a forecast is a two-step procedure. The first thing we do is create a population forecast, entire population, 0 to 4, 85 plus, male and female, for each one of your 3 elementary areas, based on 2020 census and all the demographic data we can lay our hands on. We build a fertility and mortality migration model specific to each area's unique demographic dynamics. The results of that population forecast then drives the enrollment forecast. So it's your current and future demographic dynamics that dictate the enrollment, not your past trends. Now, anytime, I knew I was not going to get this thing to work.
Put your both fingers on there and scroll.
All right, we'll do it in slow motion then. Drum roll, please. Anytime you're doing forecasts, you have to have assumptions. These are broad socioeconomic demographic parameters, so to speak, that we use to build the forecast models on. I don't want to go through all of them, but I want to go through the big four. And the big four are the ones that have the highest probability of having variance in them, which puts error in the forecast. And number one, without a doubt, is B. We assume the 30-year fixed mortgage rate is going to stay between 5.5 and 7.5% for the 10 years he's forecast. 7.6 this morning, which is at the top end of the range. Hopefully, Jerome Powell's going to take his foot off the gas. He's not going to raise rates anymore, and we'll stay in that range. Now, it's interesting times in the housing market right now. 2 years ago right now, the 30-year fixed rate was 3.5%. I don't think we're going to see anything below 5 again anytime in the next 10, 15 years. Last decade was kind of an abnormality. But it's created some problems with this rate doubling in 2 years. First off, and there's a generational issue, to those of us who remember the 70s, 80s, and 90s, when the 30-year fixed was 8, 10, 12%, 7.5 still sounds pretty good. Kids today, anybody under the age of 40, seen nothing but 3, 3.5, and 4 for the last 15 years. 7.5 sounds like highway robbery. So of course, they ought to pay back their student loans now too. The other problem is within the housing market. You don't come out of college and buy a house, you rent an apartment. That's why everybody goes to the urban areas. Start your family, have a child, but most people don't want to raise their kids in an apartment. So when the oldest one gets to about 3, 4, 5 years old, they're looking for a house in the suburbs. And they'll start their starter home. After about 3 or 4 more years, if things go well and they get the financial resources, they want to go to a move-up home. So as long as the procedure keeps moving along, we're in good shape. The problem now is a lot of people in starter homes are sitting there with a 3, 3.5, 4% mortgage. They're going to have to get a 7, 7.5 for their move-up home, and that market's stalled. That's why you're seeing so few homes on the market right now. The developers are trying to push through everything they've got in the pipeline right now. The other one is I. This is Indiana. You cannot talk about enrollment in this state without talking about open enrollment, charters, and transfers. Indiana is the only state in the country that has all three going at the same time. Okay, we've talked about this in other states around the country. It's really been a game changer. The only good thing that's come out of all those laws is Indiana has the best student tracking system in the country, bar none. I've worked in 25 states. No one's even close because there's $7,000 assigned to each child, and they're going to track it all over the place. So we have their fall and spring student transfer file back to 2017 in our computer. We use to track it all. We assume that the district will have a net average loss of 400 students per year over the life of the forecast. If that sounds high, I was in fast-growing Westfield, Washington last night, and their number's the same. East Allen's negative 1,200. Hamilton Southeast is negative 1,600. This has really been a game changer in Indiana. You're losing about 122 to Sunman, 50 to Bates, 26 to Rush, and about 130 to the privates, St. Mike being the biggest one. But we're assuming it's been pretty consistent about 400 over the last 5, 6, 7 years. So we're going to, COVID period notwithstanding, we assume that rate to stay constant. If you have more come back or more transfer in, add it to the forecast. If it goes the other direction, you subtract it from the forecast. The other two I want to go over pertains to the housing market. We assume that the district will have 20 new single-family homes constructed per year over the next 10 years. That's 200. The last 10 years, you went up 10. So it's going to pick up a little bit with the housing market going on right now. But more importantly is the number above it. 230. Franklin County, like most school districts in the country, 80 to 90% of your housing market's existing home sales. And the dynamics of that housing market is really what drives it. And the main factor there is elderly people that's over the age of, I used to say it's over the age of 60, but now that I'm 68, it's over the age of 70, moving out. When you look at elderly migration, which by the way has stalled the last 5 years because of COVID, you see a slight uptick at 62, another one at 65. But most people don't downsize till they're in their 70s. It's not retirement that triggers downsizing. It's either the death of one of the spouses or they both lose the ability to drive. And if there's one thing about Franklin County, you got to have a car out here to actually function. One of those two things happen. House is difficult, lifestyle is difficult to maintain, maintenance is difficult, and they're going to downsize. Most of them only move within somewhere between 75 miles. Depends if the kids are around or not. So, and that's my theory. A lot of them are going to move in with their children because if there's one thing we've got in this country all over the place, a dire shortage of elder housing. We just never addressed that issue the last 20 years. We knew this baby boom was coming, going to retire here in the 2020s, known this for years, didn't do anything about it. So the key point is you have to have 250 new households available either for people to move into or being built over each year over the next 10 years. I'm not worried about the 20, I'm worried about the 230. If you talk to any realtor out there in the country today, anywhere, no matter where you're at, they will tell you the supply of homes in the market right now is at a 30, 40-year low. And it's been that way since COVID. And one of the big reasons is because the elderly stopped moving during COVID and they haven't picked back up again. They're aging in place much more. That's been the big factor of COVID. The other factor of COVID I want to bring up is we're now just starting to get decent data from CDCs and State Board of Health. Everybody fixated on deaths. And yeah, there were 400,000 excess deaths in 2020 and again in 2021. People didn't notice as births dropped by 120,000. Look at the Indiana numbers, about the same percentage drop, about 3%. So it doesn't matter where you're at. There's just a couple of really small birth cohorts coming in 24, 25, and 26. Now pop back up in 22, but the births are dropping off again here in 2023, continuing a now almost 20-year-long trend of births declining in the United States and here in Indiana. The next slide I have, this is a population pyramid, okay? The number one predictive variable for future population and enrollment growth is not births, it's not deaths, it's not migration. It's age structure. How is your population distributed across the life course? And this is from the 2020 census for Franklin County Community Schools. School district geography became a recognized census geography in 2010. So we now have two censuses where they have pulled the data. They already do it for us. We have it at the school district level. We have to do it for the elementaries, but they do it for us. It's very easy to read. You have a 0 to 4, that's your preschool. That's your elementary, your middle, your high school. 20 to 34 is what we refer to as family formation ages. 80% of all births occur to women between the ages of 20 and 34 years old. Despite what you've read in the popular press, fertility rates in this country have not changed that much in the last 50 years. Stayed in a nice tight 15% band between 1.6 and 2.0 kids per woman in her lifetime. Nationwide right now is around about 1.65, all right? When you see changes in the number of births in the area, it's not due to change in birth rates, but changes in the number of women in prime childbearing age. You can have a total fertility rate of 9. If you don't have women between 20 and 34 years old, you're not going to have any births. Now, why do you have this deficit of population here? You don't have any apartments. And you don't come out of college and buy a house, you rent an apartment. Then you move out to the suburbs. That's also why you've got a slight deficit here in the 0 to 4 population. 35 to 54 are the ages where most people have kids in school. If we had parents here, the vast majority of them were between the ages of 35 and 54. There are exceptions to that. I was one of them. I was a first-time father at 40. So I was 58 when my son graduated high school, and everybody told me what a nice, well-behaved grandson I had. So, 55 to 59, or excuse me, 69, is what we refer to as the empty nest households. Now, this is where it gets confusing for people. You got the Smith family down the road, been living there for 20 years, all right? But 10 years ago, it was mom, dad, and 2 kids. But now, 10 years later, the children have grown up, graduated, gone off to college or someplace else. Same household, same owner, same family, went from 4 people per household to 2. And that was a big factor here in the last decade. Franklin County and the school district, just like most of the rest of the country, saw a rather significant drop in household size. So my favorite stats from the 2020 census. In the U.S., that drop was 0.03. Now, 0.03 doesn't sound like a lot until you multiply it by 115 million households. The population of the U.S. in the last 10 years, or the last decade, went up 22 million people. The under 18 population dropped by 1 million. Franklin County, you went from 2.64 persons per household to 2.55. So it's about a 0.09 drop. Again, doesn't sound like much till you multiply it by 6,000 plus housing units. Had the household size stayed the same, you would have had 600 more people counted in this 2020 census. Now, kind of a crude measurement here, 2 point whatever, mom, dad, whatever the point is kids. So when you see a drop in household size, a disproportionately large amount of that decline is under 18 population. Not surprising, because you've got all of these people in the empty nest. That's one reason why your enrollment was dropping off so much the last 10 years. Not because of out-migration of parents, the aging of the parents, their kids moved away. So you've now got a large bubble of population that are empty nest. Probably had kids in the system 10 years ago, don't have them anymore now. And then 70 and over referred to as the turnover ages. If I know home ownership rates or number of them and age structure, it gives me a good proxy measurement of how many homes are going to go on the market over the next 10 years. And in this school district, that number, that increase is going to be substantial. So we also refer to this as your demographic fingerprint, because no 2 areas had the same size and shape of their population pyramid. We have one here for each one of the 3 attendance area. We'll do Laurel first. And they're all scaled the same, so you can see the relative size as well of the entire population, as well as its distribution. And it's much narrower, a deficit, few people in the 20s, but not as dramatic as the district average, but they do have a large number of households in those empty nest ages. If you look at Mount Carmel, again, relative same size of population, a little stronger deficit, big here. You gotta remember, if no one moved into Mount Carmel, no one moved out. That'd be a good example here, okay? You just left your own demographic devices. 5 years later, as this group ages into 5 to 9, your elementary enrollment drops by about 50, 60, because it's just small cohorts coming in. So you would need 50, 60 children born in the 2015 to 19 years moving in just to break even, okay? And you also see in Mount Carmel, a little stronger population size in the late empty nesters. So this is the area that probably starts seeing the turnover faster, because they have so much more of their population, their homeowners in their 60s, which will now be in their 70s 10 years from now. And then Brookville Elementary stands out because it's just population size is so much bigger, okay? And it doesn't have a 0 to 4 deficit. You don't need in-migration to build up there, so it's actually a good thing. But they also have a much larger proportion of their adult population now in their late 50s. So the downside for them is, as opposed to some of the other areas, that bubble won't quite get to into the turnover ages by the end of the forecast series 2033. So you can see here where the individual dynamics of each one of the attendance areas are different. You can't use statewide, county-wide, even district-wide models. They have to be looking at each one's because of the uniqueness of their population. Next is some variables from 2020, and there's a couple points here I want to point out, and it's pretty much just to show there is a variation between the attendance areas. About 30% of the households have under 18 population. That's about normal for a suburban exurban county, but it ranges from 29 to 32. Your household size is 255, but you can see Brookville is smaller at 249. The other two are up in the 265 range. So again, there's some radically different demographic trends and dynamics between Brookville and the outlying elementary areas. And again, householders 35 to 54, about a third, you'd expect that, but 30% over the age of 65. That says, okay, we're going to have a lot of households here that are going to start turning over as we go through the next 10 years. A little later in the outlying areas because this population is actually older, so we look at median age. Owner versus renter, about 80% for the district, but Brookville again 77, Mount Carmel 84, 7 percentage point difference between the two. Last but not least, and this one always shocks people, 23% of your households in the district are single person households. That's actually pretty close to average. But 11.4 are single over 65. These are the ones most likely to turn over in the next 4 or 5 years. Is already down to one person. We pull group quarters out of those calculations as well. This is my favorite data from 2020 census because we can then look at your individual age cohorts over time. In 2020, your 5-year-olds are your kindergartners. 6-year-olds are first grade, 7 are second, 8's third, and so on. But here now in 2023, these 2-year-olds are now 5 years old. That's your first grade, second grade, third grade. So we can look at the relative cohort size. It's a great example here. Look at Brookville. 114 down to 95 pops up to 120. So that cohort comes in, oh, we're up 25 kids, must be growth. First thing I look at is, well, maybe it's cohort size. You should have 25 or so more kids coming in, not because of in-migration or growth, you just got a bigger cohort coming in. And conversely, it also shows us how big of a deficit you have to fill in. You've got big cohort coming in next year, relatively speaking, for probably kindergarten right now, but then they drop off by about 20 or 30. So they have a much more even distribution than your average suburban area. We use this to calculate something we call the market share. And what we do is we overlay your actual enrollment counts against the population total. The numbers in red each year are first grade. So this is 2020 enrollment. So at 128 enrolled versus 199, so it's 64%. In this particular decade, 2020 is not going to be a really good number to start for comparison. That's the depth of COVID. Everybody was seeing higher proportions of students going to charter, privates, virtual, homeschool, things like that. So a lot of this increase you see in the percentages between 2000 and 2021 is return migration, coming back to the public, same thing with 22. So 22 is better, I think probably a much better comparison point. And then going on to 23. So you're averaging about 75% of your age cohorts are in your schools. Given this is Indiana, where you have, most districts have a sizable proportion of the population, either transferring out to other publics or to the privates or homeschool, or the new variable out there, virtual. Sidebar on that, all the rates for all four of those went up in 21 and 20 and all that, and they've come back down. But homeschool, charter, private have never gone back down to pre-COVID rates. They're always a point or two slightly higher. The wild card in there is virtual, okay? I like this. Virtual was virtually nothing before COVID. No one had the technology or the infrastructure in it. It's gone back up. It's never going to go back down to zero. And there's a little thing out there called Union School Corp. Anybody know about Union School Corp in Indiana? One of the greatest scams in the state. It's a little, I did a forecast for them last decade. It's a little 2-township school district in Randolph County. They've got 400 kids from K through 12. Half of them don't even go to their own schools. And they've got over 5,000 virtual students. Every school district in the state has at least a handful of kids in Union School Corporation, Randolph County. Now, yeah, they only fund virtual at half the rate of a in-body student, but they're laughing all the way to the bank, you know. And they've made a business. They're probably the wealthiest school district in the state right now per capita. But their own kids go someplace else because there's nothing there. But that's never going to go back down to zero. We're always going to have virtual students. When school districts said everybody had to be virtual, you heard the hue and cry from everybody because it just really had disrupted their lives. But there was a sizable proportion of people out there that said, virtual works for me. I'm going to stick with it. And that's a 3, 4, 5% of your enrollment that was in your buildings before. It's not going to come back. So, so you're looking at, this picks up both out-migration, in-migration, and transfer numbers. Internal Revenue Service migration data. The school district is 75% of Franklin County's population. Okay, so we can look at county level data and don't want to overgeneralize from it, but it gives a good idea. I like Internal Revenue Service data because if you don't check in with them, they will track you down. So when you fill out your taxes every year, if you move and you've changed counties, you go in what's called the migrant file. And they've got this data now open to us. We have it back to 1990 in our computers now. And if it's more than 20 households moving from one county to another, they list them. So this is the 20 to 21 data. So it shows 558 households move into Franklin County, bringing 1,133 people. We household size, we have mean income. And where are they coming from? Ripley, Hamilton, Dearborn, Butler, Decatur, Fayette, Marion. And again, it shows once again, most migration is short distance. I mean, you notice people who move from other states or other parts of the country or other countries coming in, they follow strange sports teams. They don't root for the Bengals, things like that, You notice them. You don't notice the guy or the person who moved in from Ripley. You just don't. Just doesn't ring a bell with you. But you can see the relative size, and Ripley is your biggest in-migration flow. But it's 1,133 coming in. The next slide is the out-migration. It's 924 moving out for this particular year. Everybody can always tell me about the in-migration for their school district. No one can tell me about the out-migration, okay? So you got 1,100 coming in, you got 900 moving out. The net's only 200 is what you're gaining for this particular year. All right, your biggest in-migration flows are people between the ages of 28 and 44 years old, bringing 0 to 9-year-olds with them. Your biggest out-migration flow is 18 to 22-year-olds going off to college or wherever, moving out of their parents' house, and over 70. Okay, right now you're in a slight positive, but if we pull this data up for at least the last 5 years, you will see that the number is just about 0. And the increase you're seeing in migration now is not due to more people moving in, but fewer people moving out. Now again, this was during COVID too, and this data started. So that may vary, but you can see the trend line for net's not been that positive going forward. And it's probably going to stick near 0 in at least the rest of this decade, given what your age structure is. All this information goes into building the population forecast. Now there's 2 ways to read this. One is look at an age group through time. So we'll use 5 to 9 as an example because that's your elementary enrollment. 2005, 1,010, 1,030, 950. Or follow an age cohort through time. 0 to 4 becomes 5 to 9, becomes 10 to 14, becomes 15 to 19. The school district dropped about 600 people in population. County as a whole dropped about 1.2%. This is not, uncommon for rural and exurban Indiana. Your median age, 43 and a half, that's where half the people are older and half are younger. Like most of the areas of the country, it's creeping up, again, because of the aging population, the outmigration of young people. We refer to these as the components of change. This is births for the 5-year period, 20 to 25. You see the births slightly drop off, not because of a drop in fertility rate, but due to fewer women in prime childbearing age. Deaths keep going up. Why? We'll not get more people in prime dying age. So again, I used to consider prime dying age over 65, but it's now over 80. So, 'cause I'm 68. So, natural increase goes negative. Now, this is the dominant demographic trend for the United States over the next 10 to 15, 20 years with the aging baby boom. Despite what you hear in the popular press, foreign migration has not been the backbone of pop growth in this country the last 250 years. It's been natural increase, excess of births over deaths. Now, during COVID, everything got thrown off. But even before COVID, we had 850 counties in 4 states in the U.S. with more deaths than births. Post-COVID, we've kind of gone back to those trends. But even here in Indiana right now, we already have 15 counties, what we call ZPG, more deaths than births. And that number is going to pick about 2 or 3 per year over the rest of the decade. Franklin County and your neighbors will probably be joining that. Right now, they're mostly on the western border with Illinois and around Lafayette area. We blame it on Purdue. I'm sure there's a joke there someplace. I won't go there. Net migration, again, that's the net number. How many moving in, my son move out for the 5-year period, and the population change. Slight population growth if your migration trend holds. Because you're going to be tough to do because it's hard for your population to grow when you have more deaths than births. Yeah. The results of this pop forecast then go into the enrollment forecast. What everybody's been waiting for. Okay, now, 75% of the school districts in Indiana and 70% of the school districts in the country will lose enrollment the next 10 years. That's been declining births. Again, the births have been going down since 2008 in this country. And it really dropped off the last couple of years. But to understand changes in year-to-year enrollment, the analogy I use is a bucket of water. If I have a bucket of water, I'm pouring water in the top, and there's a hole in the bottom. As long as I'm pouring in faster than it's running out the bottom, the level will rise. But if for some reason the hole in the bottom gets bigger, and it's now going out faster than I'm pouring in, if I keep pouring in the same rate, level will drop. Enrollment works the same way. If you're looking at the district level, what's the size of the K-1 cohorts coming in? What's the size of the 12th grade cohorts going out? And this is where you're seeing a bit of a turn here in your enrollment. K-12, particularly after 2027, you see your total enrollment starting to go up. And the big reason for that, not in-migration, not more births, smaller cohort sizes. Over the last 5 years, your average high school graduating class was averaging about 172. In the next 10 years, it's going to be about 140. That's 30 less you're going to have to make up for each year. Much easier to do given your dynamics, okay? Which is why you start seeing your elementary enrollment starting to go up because the same principle works. You've got these big cohorts that have come out the last 4 or 5 years. You've got much relatively smaller ones going out the next 10 years. So at the elementary level, your enrollment, you start to increasing slightly, particularly after 2028. At that point, something's going to have to happen. You're going to have a large, and by large I'm talking 25% of your homeowners over the age of 70, 15% over the age of 75, 10% over the age of 80. They're either going to downsize or they're going to die. And the result of that is they're either, if they downsize or they die, put the home on the market, a new young family with kids will probably move into that. Either that or you're going to wind up with a whole bunch of empty housing units. I don't see that happening. So that's what's going to trigger a large amount of this increase in the elementary after 2028. Work its way through middle school and then work its way through high school. Now, talking about the previous big cohorts going out, you still have a few going out, 183 next year and a 158. That's what's driving these large declines here in the short term in the high school. You know, stabilize have been probably in the mid 500s. That wave of in-migration, that wave of new households won't really affect your high school enrollment till after the 2033 forecast and beyond the scope of these. 30 minutes, that's good for me. That's probably these old professors, you can't shut them up. You know, so. Questions? Well, I couldn't explain it that
Anyone
well.
have questions for the gentleman? No one?
I have a question. Just given our county being unique, I think it's a big county. Even if each area we think is probably a little unique to itself. But does the forecast consider that just having farms instead of suburbs?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. My thinking there is, as I've seen elderly couples, I have to even say families, basically, their farms come up.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the homes that I'm hearing, as you're saying, would be coming up for sale as they downsize or die.
Mm-hmm.
We don't see one home. In a lot of cases, we're seeing them sell off the farm,
No.
things like that.
Part of the problem there is young people don't want to farm anymore. So
Right.
It's hard to get young people in there to do that. The prevailing wisdom in 2015 when I was here was all those farms, particularly on the western side of or the eastern side of the district, were going to be sold and turned into homes for people moving in from Cincinnati. We saw how that worked, you know. So the big suburbanization boom is over. You know, some places are still doing strong right now, but not out of Cincinnati, not out of Indianapolis, not out of Columbus. It's really slowing down. You have to remember that in the next 10 years, 14 to 16 million baby boomers are going to downsize. You know, that's going to dump a lot of homes on the market. So they're going to have trouble selling those. Right now we have a shortage of homes. I'm thinking by the end of the decade we're going to have a glut of homes on the market. And that's what concerns me the most. So, but right now, aging in place, longer lifestyles, more active, you know, they don't want to leave. There's no place for them to go. They're going to stay put. And the longer they stay put, the longer it's going to be before you see school-age kids come out of there.
Drew, when you're talking about what you talked about, 10 years from now, the forecast is it's still 1909, so that impact is not great for us.
No. Well, that's down
40
40.
from where we are right now.
Most of your surrounding, most of the districts in the state would kill for that small amount. A lot of them are going to lose 10, 15%.
In the next 10
in the
years.
next 10 years. I mean, there's, do the math on this. The large birth cohorts are going through, born in 6, 7, and 8, are graduating high school next 3 or 4 years. At the same time, when those small COVID cohorts are going in, a lot of school districts are just going to get pummeled the rest of this decade. And if they don't have substantial new home construction, and most of them don't, and by most I'm talking 80 to 90% of them, they're really getting hammered. God, just the ones on this trip, Huntington, they should close 2 schools now. You know, and that's the pressing issue too. Is over over the next 10 years, and at least in the state of Indiana alone, we'll close 50 elementaries, probably 25 middles and 10 high schools easily, in the next 10 years for a host of reasons. One of the big reasons is we built this giant, not just in Indiana, but all over the country, giant school system for the baby boom back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And we finished it in 75 in Indiana, right when the peak of the boom, graduated high school. Well, there was no baby boom in Indiana. We've never gotten back within 25% down from our baby boom peak. I think 127 births in 57, 90,000 was the closest we ever got again. Those buildings are now 60, 70, 80 years old, and they've come to the end of their useful lives. We're doing a bunch of redistricting right now. If a building is old enough to qualify for Social Security, it should be retired. It's just too expensive to rebuild it. I've seen how expensive it's been to rebuild me in the last year, so I can't imagine what a building would cost. So, the state's not going to fund it. And they don't have enough kids. Their enrollments most school districts in the state are not even close to what they had in 1970s enrollment, and that's just not going to change. So, and the finances are forcing them to make very, very difficult decisions. I'll go back to Huntington's example. They've got an elementary in the south called Salamone, running about 50% capacity. They should probably close it. The problem is they know if they close it, they're going to lose half of the existing students at Norwell. And that's why the transfer law in Indiana is such a game changer, because you have to think about that when you're doing facility assessments. So that's why I say eventually it's just going to get too expensive to keep these buildings open. They're going to have to close them. They don't have any choice.
Well, I think you're talking about the pink elephant in the room right now, because we need to address just those issues. Our population is diminishing. The overhead is increasing, and a large part of what we do, there isn't one person on this school board that wants to close the school. It affects the population in so many ways, economically, and also as the communities go. But what we have to do as a board now is really look at this demographic and see where we're headed, because school financing is projected out 3, 4, 5 years.
Yeah.
And if we don't act now, then we're going to wind up with a possible state takeover in a hurry, because we have to be able to give employee raises and maintain, and it's not an easy decision. You're seeing it statewide. All of our neighboring counties are seeing elementaries close. I know up in Connersville they had 3 or 4 close. Mm-hmm. Rushville has closed Mays. And then you throw in the charter schools, mm-hmm. and you mentioned Union, Clarksville is another one.
Yep.
That magically have students because it's virtual. And this all costs, and the state projecting out more for charter schools and promoting homeschooling makes it more difficult. We're down 35% since school choice was enacted. And that's not a good number, and it's not going to change either, because that's where we're going. So we have to prepare. We have to make some decisions as a board on what we're going to do to move forward. Otherwise, we'll fail the public. And our number one interest is what's best for those kids. And it doesn't seem that way.
And this is not news to anybody who heard me speak before. I am a harsh critic of the choice that's set up there, even what their logic is. But what bugs me about it, I can't figure this out. Okay, you want districts to be more efficient, I can see that. You want to support closed schools, you don't want, I'm going to give people choice on that. Then why'd they pass that idiotic rule that if you close a building, you have to sell to a charter for $1? That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard of in my life, okay? Unless you got stock in a charter school company, And there was an article today where IPS, which is down to 4 high schools now. Can you believe that? There's only 4 high schools left in IPS. And the Marion County Court ruled that the dollar rule doesn't apply to them selling 2 facilities, because they got to deal with some of their charter going on there. It's just, there's just no leadership. It's open war on public education. Makes you guys' job a heck of a lot more difficult, you know, because you want to deal with these demographic issues and growth and change, aging buildings, facility costs, and taxpayers. No one wants to pay for more. And go back to that number one number on my chart. Only a third of your households have kids in them. That's normal. That's average now, you know. And those households only have, maybe if they have kids in them, 2 on average, if you're lucky, you know. So you're, people, okay, get referendums passed. Well, yeah, you're outnumbered 2 to 1 before you even start, you know. So I don't think the legislature appreciates the difficulties that are facing people trying to run school districts.
Yeah, and the only way we can really reduce our expenses by closing a building, because we'll gain from the reduction in personnel that we would have to give raises to, and that amount. The overhead of the maintenance of the building, and there's so many ways we can do that, but a large concern of ours is what you just said, of students going to another district, because Franklin County's so large that we're a lot closer to some of the other school districts than they are to the center of Brookville there. So we have to consider every single option.
Yep.
And, you know, I've heard people on this board say, I don't want to close the school until we've tried everything. Well, I think we're almost to that point where there's not a lot left to try.
Well, I've always advocated that they should take all these, particularly in the rural areas, empty schools and repurpose them for elder housing, you know, which would be great, because then they can allow them to stay in their communities around their friends and family, puts their homes in the market, let new young households move in, and solves that elder problem, you know. Of course, that you know, would take leadership and foresight and intestinal fortitude, so we're doomed. When we see that out of the legislature.
And you're also getting up there too, I noticed. So, you're getting up there also, so
Who?
it might provide you a home.
Oh, God, no. No, my wife has told me that we're moving to South Alabama, and I don't have any choice in the matter, so I'm just along for it. That's why I live in South Carolina, and I took a job down there and insist I move with her. So,
So we're not unique like a lot
No.
of people say. It's happening statewide that people are having.
nationwide. New England, Northeast, border states, rural South, plain states, far west, it's all over the place.
The only item that was really lacking, and there's no way you can project out, is if there's a change in employment through a large company or something moving in. And I do not see that in Franklin County until we get a straight road in or out of the county.
What a great example. Right up the road here on 74, what'd they build? A Honda plant there at Greenburg? Okay, so you got Greenburg City and what's the county?
Decatur.
Decatur, thank you very much. And we came down there, hue and cry. We've done all the big districts that have the auto plants in, north, south, midwest, whatever. We're going to grow, we're going to boom. Their enrollment went, phew. Everybody likes economic development. No one wants to live next to it, okay? And their enrollment just kept going down. Why? Because they built on I-74, and people are going to drive up and down 74. They've got workers coming anywhere from Indianapolis to Cincinnati because they don't understand household dynamics. You tend to have 2 workers in the household now. You have 2 commute patterns. No one moves for a job anymore, okay? Well, yeah, I'm going to work here. Where's my spouse work? So if I'm working down at the plant in Greenburg and my wife works in Indianapolis, I'm going to live in Shelbyville, okay? If it's that plant down Cincinnati, they might consider here Batesville, something like that. Or more than likely, one closer to where the kids are going to school, because the commute pattern of the children has to mirror the commute pattern of the parent. They cannot be 180 degrees out. So when you see a big auto plant like that come in, or who was it? Lebanon. We were up there last week. They're going to build that big Lilly facility up there. If they get 20% of the workers living in that district, they'll be lucky. It's closer usually to 10 or 15. To be spread all over the place. So that's why the regional economic development plan is far superior, because it's not going to affect just one county, one school district. It's going to be multiples. So even if you do bring it in, You know, and more than likely, it's not so much here, but on the west side of metropolitan Cincinnati. They bring it out towards the interstate.
I have a question
Sure.
regarding this page and one of the previous pages, but you talk about the elementary age slightly going up or climbing and then staying steady starting in 27, 28. You a couple times said the 28 year. And that increase would need more housing, and you look at the net population forecast from 25 on, we are having more deaths than births, so we should have that housing coming available, correct?
We assume that it will be. It better be, or I'm going to be too high. Now, I think that the point of contention here, which you're thinking new housing like being built.
No,
I'm thinking
I'm
about
saying
existing empty nesters
if
turning
we're
over.
losing people due to death, there should be
Yeah,
housing
they're-
becoming available because
yeah.
they're not living in apartments or assisted living because it doesn't exist around here.
If they keep living in place longer, then it's going to push that out farther to 2030. So that's my concern. If the mortality rates hold as they do right now, post-COVID, you're going to see an increase in you know, your deaths are now back to pre-COVID rates, back to COVID level. Your wild card out there is keeping that transfer number down -200.
Well, that was my other question. On the second page, rate of students transferring out. District will average a net loss of 400 students annually due to transfers. I assume you mean each year there'll be about 400 students that transfer out, not new 400 each year.
Yep.
But we're consistently staying in the 70 to 75% of kids are going here that should be going here.
That live here, yeah. So now that 400 number stayed pretty consistent over the last 4 or 5 years. So I think that 75% is probably a safe number to work off of. I can't see any district here going closed. You know, Batesville decides they want to go closed boundaries, possibility. Again, it's a little tough. You're not going to lose many to Lawrenceburg or anything like that because that Route 1's a tough ride, you know, go down there. So I don't see any of the neighboring districts changing their policies. You're always going to have some in the periphery where they're actually closer to the neighboring school district schools than yours, particularly elementary level, high school. And this is one of the phenomenons in Indiana that really shocked people, called the big high school effect. And once a district's high school gets to about 2,000, 2,500 students, and there's a lot of them in Indiana, kids go there, they can't be on the sports teams, they can't get in the clubs, they can't do activities because it's so big. So a lot of the bigger and considered more successful school districts in the state are losing 100, 125, 150 high school students to neighboring districts. Mount Vernon up in Hancock County, living and dying off the 150 they get out of Hamilton Southeast. Where I grew up, Northwest Allen, Smith Green, Churubusco gets 150, and they only got 1,000 kids from K through 12 to start with, and they have that 150 coming in from Northwest Allen, they'd be long gone. Hamilton Heights out of Noblesville, Sheraton out of Westfield, Washington. You know, the ones up in Crown Point, Lake County, it's going all over the place, but a lot of districts are basically living off of that inflow. Problem is your big metropolitan area that you're next to is another state. So you don't have that benefit of having big high schools in large counties nearby. But, and then, of course, everybody's moving out of Muncie. And there are those little school districts around there benefiting from that. And then the township districts in Marion County, they get a ton in from IPS. They get almost the same number going out to the outlying suburban counties in Hancock and Hendricks County. It's really bizarre. But if you see more year-to-year variation, when we do our evaluation, and I'll call up Tammy next October when your ADMs come out, we do this as part of the project for all of our districts. Send me your ADMs, and we'll do an evaluation by year by grade for the district level by school total. That's an evaluation, not a recalculation, so that costs extra. But I want to see how the models are holding up, and I can look okay, the 30-year fixed rate's at 7%, and you got 450 out transfers, I should be too high. Or conversely, the 30-year fix is down to 5.5%, you have 350 transfers, I should be too low. Okay, I want to know where the error is coming from so I can track it. So we'll be doing that for the 24, 25, and 26 school year. And of course, if we do ever go into the recession, they keep predicting all bets are off. Because they've been calling for that for a year now, and it's just not happening. But it will eventually.
What do you mean by all bets are off? How does that change? I'm just curious your thoughts.
A recession?
How would that change? You said all bets are off.
I would say that your home sales would drop off dramatically. And you're instead of going from a housing shortage in the market, you go to a housing glut quickly, particularly if the 30-year fixed rate doesn't drop correspondingly. So you would probably be too high then in a recession. Instead of 1863 in 2027, probably closer to 1800 if we go into a year-long recession. If I'm wrong on these forecasts, I'm probably too high.
I was going to say that the forecast that you did previous to this had us at 2063, and we have what, 1940 now?
Well,
So,
yeah.
and I know there's no way that you can say, hey, I'm going to hit it right on the head, because you're using the variables that may or may not remain constant. So.
Two things on that. COVID kind of screwed things up a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, that at a district in Vermont, some board president, you didn't forecast COVID. Yeah, you're right. I did not see that on the radar.
I don't know why not. But okay.
We've been doing forecasts for Penn Harris Mass and up by South Bend for 20 years now, and we go and do a presentation of their evaluation. So up there a few years back, and I had forecasted for them that year 12,248 students. Hit it around the nose. 12,248 students. Worst thing that ever happened to me. Because after that, the board expected the same level of accuracy for all subsequent forecasts. So the next year, I'm off by 9. So the board president goes, my God, that's a 900% increase in error. We're paying for this? Well, yes, you are actually. But, you know, no one's ever happy with it. Or, you know, but COVID, you know, that just really, most school districts lost between about 3 and 8% of their enrollment. You guys got in the lower end of the bracket on that, about 3% loss. But that's been pretty consistent across the country, okay? What's been all over the place is the bounce back rates. Some came back within 1 or 2 years. Some didn't come back at all. Some dropped 2 or 3 more years in a row, too. A lot of factors in there. So the decline was pretty consistent, you know. And what was the rate of return? Because they didn't leave. They didn't move away. They just chose other educational options, you know. And do they now choose to go back to where they were before or stay where they're at? And that's a parental decision. And that, again, varies from area to area, school to school, options to options, things like that. The availability of virtual. In Indiana, the return rates tend to be a little lower because there was the virtual option. And they may have been 3rd or 2nd grade when they left for COVID. They're now 5th or 6th now. The decision-making process for a parent for late elementary, early middle school kids, far different than it is for early elementary. You know, so there's a lot of variables in play here.
Well, COVID did 2 major things. One is it kind of depleted. We lost a lot of students that never came back, either homeschooling or virtual.
Mm-hmm.
But it also gave you a little bit of a false sense of security with financing, too.
Yeah.
Because they provided money.
Yeah, it's the one thing we can forecast with probably great certainty that no one will argue with is the fact that things will never again go back to the pre-COVID ways. I mean, it's now permanently changed on too many variables, too many factors, too many areas. Economic, social, demographic, take your pick. Not going to replicate the last decade or the decade before that again.
Anyone else? I just have one last thing I'd like to say, and that is the closing of a school is not easy. As a matter of fact, we have ties to the community, and everyone in here wants to keep them all open. But in order for us to improve education, not just meet the basic goal, in order to give a good education, we just about have to close the school, and we need to start talking about it.
I'll log your room out, and we can still have discussion amongst themselves if they'd like.
Good? Okay. Should I get out of town? We'll be getting good? Oh, I need to leave your technology here.
Yeah, if I take it home, they yell at me.
There we go. Thank you.
Thank you for coming again.
Amy knows how to get a hold of me, so.
So what does the audience think about this is my question.
That's what the audience thinks about this presentation.
Anyone?
It was eye-opening. Very interesting.
Any comments by the board?
Something specifically eye-opening, or just?
Shocking. A little shocking that the numbers are as bad as they are.
Along with what Sarah just said, if you at all read any news or go on your Chromebook or look at other school districts, it's just all over. It's not us. It's all over. He was talking about the South Bend area. My brother grew up or raised his family. He had one of his children go to South Bend Riley, and then the other two went to Penn. I mean, booming schools at that time, booming. And they're shutting schools down in South Bend. Penn was where they kind of moved out of the district in town and went to the sort of like Indianapolis. You went to the north central, but then they moved them out to Fishers, and then they kept moving them. That's kind of what happened in South Bend. They moved out to Penn, and now Penn's having problems. So it's not just us. It's awful.
What I miss?
What's that?
What I miss?
Yeah, you missed all the wise
Awful.
things that I said. Yeah. Nothing, actually. Sheriff just said it was eye-opening. Any other comments? I mean, I have the feeling that all of you are aware of our financial situation, what we need to do. It's just a matter of how we do it. Mr. Bundy?
I've been through this in another district before. I don't envy any of you being in the position you're in, but at the previous district, there was inaction, and a decision wasn't made until the point where they didn't know if they were going to meet their December payroll. And luckily, state funding came in time for them to meet that. And it really, in my opinion, set that school corporation back over time. And I don't know what the answer is. I'm not going to throw out ideas. I just know that I'd hate to see the school corporation make the same mistakes and set us back as we go forward.
Well, for the ones that's been on here a while and the new ones now see exactly what our finances are and where we're bleeding money at, this is something that we can't sit on. This is something that we have to do pretty quickly. And we have to look down 5-10 years down the road and see where we want to be at. Plus take in all the figures that where growth might be and where students may be coming in. And that's going to be tough, but that's a decision that we have to make and have to make pretty quick. because we can't keep bleeding money out and think everything's gonna be hunky-dory. No, it's not.
Well, I mean, they've paired off as much as they can. Now, the next step, if we're not going to close the building, we have to have pay-to-play or paid transportation or some way to generate income, and that just deteriorates the school system. And as a teacher, do you really want to go to a school that's in financial jeopardy? We have to secure the finances in order to get good people.
And I do not want the state to come in and take over and tell us what we're gonna do. We have a board, we have decisions we gotta make, and we gotta make it. And it may not be popular, but, you know, that's just the way things are in today's world.
Rick, you realize they won't come in and tell us, they'll tell us
Oh,
to
yeah.
go out the door and they'll be here.
Yeah. But, you know, I go home every night and I think about what I can do for the kids, what I can do for the teachers, the custodians, and everybody that works for the school corporation, and what I can do for the corporation. And if I look at making it better, then I'm fine with it.
So what are we doing to make it better, to get those transfer students back, to get that forecasted numbers that are going up that need housing? What are we doing? What are we, instead of cutting and closing, what are we doing to try to grow, to make things better?
But you have a suggestion? Because it sounded like it was pretty much a constant that just about each school corporation loses around.
I understand what Kevin's saying.
I do too. I mean,
No, I'm sorry. I think something that's very disheartening is that we've heard so many presentations as new building programs coming in. We've got the new development that's out just up on the hill. We've got the new development that's in Mount Carmel. But yet when you listen to the logistics this evening and it's the time for people to come and move into the community, that's not gonna happen any longer. That can be very disheartening because we just heard a few months ago, we're doing these developments so that people will move into the community. But yet we're hearing at the same time, people aren't going to come into the community. I think that we're doing everything we can do to bring people back into the school just by talking to those that have decided to stay virtual for whatever reason it is, and it is a good amount. And for those that are homeschooling on their own without any type of guidance, yes, we need to reach out to that in some respect. But at this moment, we've got to think in terms of how we're going to preserve those that we have sitting here tonight and what we're going to be able to do for them. I don't think there is a pat answer. We've all tossed around on contacting our representatives and putting an end to the open enrollment. That's not going to happen at this time. But we've got to come up with something if we don't brainstorm together.
I think everyone can agree to that. But I thought Kevin's question was more along, excuse me, I'm losing my voice here.
My questions are
Was about bringing students back that we've.
and I've said this before. I was surprised when he said this about businesses. That's not what we need. We need to attract those people that they do work in Harrison or Oxford or Hamilton, but they choose to live here and they will sacrifice that 20-minute drive to go there because they live like this school in this community. But we have to attract them here. And cutting is not the way to do it. I mean,
The cutting had to occur to preserve the school at that point. Any cutting more, I agree. There's no more to pare.
I understand at certain points you have to cut, but you should make cuts where you're not sacrifice, or if you can, make the cuts and not sacrifice something. Not get rid of something just to make the cut. If you can do something more frugally and still have the same benefits and classes and offerings, then that's the route.
Can you give me an example of what you're talking about? How to cut spending and keep the apropos?
I think what
I'm
Ms.
just curious.
Chavis has done and what Mr. Isaacs has done,
A
and
perfect example was
nobody
when
understands
we
that.
just approved bus contracts yesterday. We cut 8 routes. so those are the types of things that we're staying away from the classroom, and we saved, what, $250,000, and that's every single year, $250,000. So you're talking $800,000, close to $1 million in transportation costs, and that's away from the classroom, and that's what we strive to do. We're not going in and saying, oh, you've got a class of 28, I'm gonna give you 2 teachers, and that's exactly what we did, because we knew that we needed to do that. So those are the things that I think sets us apart. I don't think any of these administrators and any of our teachers are doing anything differently than any other school building or school corporation in the state of Indiana to say those 400 kids are going out. We're doing everything that everybody else is doing, and I think we're doing it better. So I don't know, other than
To attack the finance.
I don't know what we can do differently to bring those kids back, because he said it's a parent choice, and they're going to go where they want to go no matter what. We could have the Taj Mahal, we could have all of these grandiose things, and if they still wanted to go somewhere else and they still wanted to be online, they would do that.
Yep. We've made ourselves an early college high school.
There
is no other
everything that we possibly
high
can.
school in the area close offering the number of dual credits that we're offering, and what we've built that in the 10 years that I've been, Whitney's
And every
been with me
single
as well.
elementary- Every single elementary that I went to on Friday, every single one of those veterans were standing up, and they were very appreciative of the effort of our building. So we treat people the way they should be treated. And guests in our building, I think we do a fantastic job. If you spend time in those buildings and you see what's going on in those classrooms, and I think you would understand that we are doing that. I don't think we're sitting back and saying, well, we're not going to do anything to get these people back, because we're doing that every single day. If you're in those buildings, you see that.
I have a few things to say. Number one, I don't know if they know this about when we first started this, and this might have been 5 years ago. We took the lights and what'd we do the lights to?
We turned them LEDs.
LED lights,
Yeah.
and they came in and that saved us money. That was way back. That was very minute to what we're talking about right now. The second thing I want to say is he was talking about the big, huge high schools. Well, East Central's right there. Some of those kids are going right down over the hill to Lawrenceburg because they would have never, ever played football at East Central, because you have over 100 kids on your football team. And then the third thing is, when we moved the 7th and 8th graders into one building, we moved them in for equality of education. The kids in the outer buildings were not able to get what the kids at Brookville.
Equal
education.
Yeah.
And I kind of think that, I think we have some things in the outer buildings, and maybe in the elementary, that we need to look at. I'm concerned about some of the lower kids. And we work our butts off to get to those lower kids, and sometimes we just can't get to them, or our special kids. And I think if we come in and bring those monies together, that's, for me, that we're here for the kids.
Yep.
And again, that's the kids.
I think we're doing great work in that space, and you can step into any of these buildings and feel it. Like you said, Tammy, you can see it, you can feel it if you step in there. I would like to see, and I know this was in the works, I don't think I've noticed or seen it, maybe it should be bigger, but like the campaign around our schools that I thought we were working with, I guess the Brookville Redevelopment Commission, part of the TIF money, stuff like that. I know the survey went out, but I think as a parent or as a person looking for a home, you look on Zillow, you see the school grades, you look at stuff like that. It's perception. It's in your face. And that's where I think we could do this better, is pushing more of that out, not just inside of Franklin County. Those people already know.
Well,
I'd love to see a
agree.
campaign.
We've addressed that before.
No, I agree with both
Just
Jessica
what you're
and
talking
Kevin,
about.
is that, You know, when he says, what are we doing to pull people in? We have one of the top music programs. There's only 2 schools in the state that can offer the courses in the music that we do. They come out here and they're ready for professional training. You can step in any one of the elementaries and they're wonderful. Their teaching staff is great. Shannon actually called people to get them to come back in. I mean, we're doing stuff that isn't in the ordinary. But can we do a better job? Absolutely. But we have to have those things. And when I ask you, do you have any ideas, what are you going to market?
So speaking of what you were talking about, Jessica, it's in the hands of SchoolComm at this point. They're taking the results of that survey. It's been, 2 weeks probably? I think we're ending our 2nd week.
The 3rd was the last day, I think.
And so I thought I would have it by now. I really did. But with the holiday coming up, I'm not going to anticipate it till after Thanksgiving now. But that's where we're at. And I think she will meet with that committee, say this is where, what I saw, what I observed, or what I read, and have some recommendations for it.
Who will meet with what committee?
SchoolComm will meet with the committee that came up with this, that worked, the foundation, and Ms. South, Mrs. Gilman, Shermer, Bill Shermer, and Brandon, I believe, so.
But even when that comes out, we can still move forward. I mean,
Absolutely.
and that's something that we have to. And my thing is quality education for every kid that goes to Franklin County.
What do you mean when that comes out, we can still move forward?
We can still move forward. When that projection comes out of advertising the school, we have to still move forward with plans to do stuff. We can't just sit back and wait. Well, we want to wait on that there and see what comes in off of that. We still have to keep going. We can't just wait and see what happens, because then when you get that wait and see, well, then it's going to be too late.
Just
I mean, I understand what you're
curiosity.
saying, but we're waiting on a survey that we should have the results within a couple weeks to
Yeah.
see what
Yeah,
the perception is of our schools,
Yeah.
to see what direction we should go, or what corrections we need to
I don't
make.
think we asked that about what direction. I think it was more of communication, those types of things. So I think regardless of what we do,
Yeah.
we would still make those improvements based on those results from the survey. If they say, if the community said this, this, and this, I still want to do that, no matter what the board decides to do. And it was based on communication and satisfaction and information and those types of things were the way the questions were.
But I feel like from that survey too, we will get a better idea to what Kevin has asked several times, I know, during different times that I've even spoken with him about what we're doing to get him back. Because if we're having negative feedback from those satisfaction surveys, then those people typically aren't going to move back into our community. They're going to move to outlying towns, therefore, because they have a better opportunity. So I'm going to use my own family. I'm going to use my own family as an example. Chad and I live in Brookville. We both graduated from Franklin County in the year 2000. He drives an hour and a half to Indianapolis and back every day as a superintendent for a union construction company. I work here in Brookville, so it's easy for me. My son just graduated in 2021 from the high school. Him and his fiance both are Franklin County graduates, and they chose to move to Batesville. Why? Because they claim that they didn't have a positive experience in school. So they want their child, and I'm not saying anything negative because I know we have great teachers and great educators and everybody does everything, but different kids learn different ways. So that impacts their education. So therefore,
Just out of curiosity, where does your son and his fiance work?
my son works in Oxford and lives in Batesville. So Brookville would have actually been a closer place for him to live. But they have a child, and they chose to send they want their child to go to school in Batesville just based upon their own personal experience. So what are we doing Do you see what I'm saying? That satisfaction survey is going to tell us how our community feels and why their kids are moving out. Because if they're going home and parents are saying poor things about our school corporation, that's feeding into them, because we all know as teachers and people working in education that our nature somewhat affects our decisions and in life. So I have even asked my son, why? You know, like, I want to know why you want to go over here and why that experience here wasn't so great.
And
That's
the response?
He just says that he just feels like the opportunity in his education was not the best. That's what he tells me. But I can look at my daughter, on the other hand, and she feels completely different. But I think that a lot of times we get different educators, like I said, that impact us differently at different points in our life, and that makes that decision. Are we ever going to change those people's mind to have them move back? Because really, that's what we're counting on. We're counting on our kids moving back, our grandkids moving back, and they complete that cycle of coming to our school corporation. And when we break that cycle, we're hoping that people from Indy or Cincinnati that don't probably know where Brookville, Indiana is, unless they've came to the lake, are going to move back here.
Well, when we do everything we can, like Mr. Isaac said, and thanks to Whitney, about offering a better education, I don't know what else you can do.
I know.
You know,
But like Beth said, you know, we do have those inequalities. We do within each building. So is it because, you know, maybe there was help that somebody didn't get at a certain age level because they were missed, because we become so spread out that it's hard, you know, to say, I don't know that. And that's what I said. Like, I can't say anything about bad about any of the teachers. My kids have had excellent teachers, excellent administrators, and I can't say anything bad about them. But it does play our own personal experience. And if we want those kids to come back, how are we going to keep them wanting their kids to come to school here?
I think that I could say the same thing. I have a friend that just fought her husband tooth and nail to move back here from Nashville because they have a child who was at the time turning 2, 3, she's 4 now, but same thing. She wanted to be back at home. I could say, I mean, I didn't go to school here. Michael Brennan drugged me here. I liked it or not years ago, but I went to Oak Hills, a gigantic school. I graduated with 800 people.
You finished last in your class?
I was in the top. I was in the top, easy. But, I mean, I had every opportunity. We had excellent schools.
but my point
But
is,
I still am not there. So
we still have to move on. Depending on what the survey says, we can still implement that stuff.
we still have to make the best decision we can.
Yes,
I agree.
yeah.
But I feel like the survey will give us some of those answers
yeah,
to why.
I don't think it's
Mrs.
gonna
Nick.
answer a lot of your questions though. As Francis said, I lost 42. Now, my numbers aren't that bad because I had families come back. But I called every single family, and it had nothing to do with Franklin County or me. If I heard the number of times, I love you, Mrs. New. I think you've done amazing things. But it's society. It's the same reason Beth and I were sitting here going, where are all the kids going? They're going home. Parents aren't working, and if I wasn't working, I keep my kids at home, and I'm a public school educator. I've been in school since I was 5. I've never had a day in my life that I haven't been in school. It doesn't matter what they say. They're keeping their kids at home because they don't like the way society's moving. And you can change anything you want. It isn't going to bring them back here. My daughter is a middle class, born and bred, wanted nothing to do with education. She's in grad school now, and she will never move back to Morristown, Indiana, because she wants a different experience than the sheltered life her mom provided her. And she currently lives in Trafalgar, where I moved away from, because I didn't want that experience for my children. So my children are moving back to where I wanted to leave. It doesn't matter. What's gonna happen is if you you ask our opinion, and we're all scared to give it because we all need jobs. But the fact of the matter is, if you don't do something quick, they're going to leave. I'm going to leave. That good quality educators are going to, one, they're gonna retire, because they're all old, as he pointed out. Or two, they're gonna go elsewhere, because since I've been here, it's, Shannon, don't worry about it, they've been talking about this for years. Shannon, don't worry about it, you don't need to go somewhere else, because they've been talking about this for years. In a perfect world, y'all would put us at Brookville, as much as I don't wanna close Laurel, because I happen to think I'm the best, sorry. But
Wow, I hope you make it out of the building alive.
I'm just saying, I know, I'm a stepchild. I think that we all need to be in one, because if you're talking about those inequities, the only way, the three of us work together every day. I talk to these two women more than I talk to my husband.
And your husband appreciates that.
He does. He's thanking them. But the fact of the matter is, you're never gonna get us equal if we're not in one place. And I don't want you to put us together. If you said, Shannon, what's your personal opinion? I don't want that. But I worked in MSD Warren Township for 20 years. If you're gonna be successful and you're gonna thrive, you need to put us together. You need to put us together, because that's the only way a Laurel child is gonna have the same opportunities as a Mill Carmel. I don't care what y'all do, it ain't gonna happen. They're rich farmers and I'm poor. And y'all can make as excuses as you want, but that's the truth. I'm not from here. I don't know anyone. I just know that what we're living is painful, and my teachers deserve better. My custodians deserve better. My secretaries deserve better. And pulling them along, making them wait, is going to make them leave. So I don't know what the answer is. I don't want to be you or Tammy.
You mentioned the society part. Do you mean the school society and atmosphere, or just the lifestyle in general, or they're moving away?
And I'm going to use my daughter as an example. Mrs. Fussel's daughter was in this.
And I can't believe your daughter wouldn't want to stay in Morristown where the Bluebird restaurant is.
I know, right? But my daughter came. She's graduated. Golly,
Got the copper kettle.
20 maybe. 20. And I asked her to come with me to watch the performance that you guys put on here. She shook sitting in that. And I was like, Lexi, what in the world is wrong with you? And she's like, you can't be in here. I can't be in here. Because my daughter was raised in an environment where doing school shootings is normal. I never did that as a child. But this generation of kids don't blink an eye because they have to hide under a desk, or they have to stand on a toilet, or they have to run and hide under the swing set. You know, we didn't do that. That's not normal for us.
Now, we did a civil disturbance, or a CD done back in the 50s, 60s.
But
Hide under our
that is
desk.
what's new. And it doesn't matter whether it's school or whether you're at McDonald's. It doesn't matter if you're at Walmart. I mean, it's something that we can't change. So the demographic studies, the public opinion polls, they're not going to matter, because at the end of the day, it's every school, like this gentleman just said. It doesn't matter if you're in Warren Township, if you're in Trafalgar, Indiana, or Indian Creek. It is all changing in society, and we're not going to be able to protect our children any way that we want. I mean, the three of us are getting lashback because we're checking IDs. And I had a parent ring me just so that Jill could have a lockdown situation, and she'd come and say, Shannon, I'm sorry I treated you like that yesterday. But thank you, because now I get it, because of the situation Jill had in Brookville. We're not going to be able to provide our kids the security they need in 3 separate elementaries. It isn't going to happen. And the only way to make our families feel better is to give them quality assurance. And we can't do that. Like, I don't care what y'all put in place. Come spend a day with me. Come sit. Anybody that wants to come in my building, I have a cop there 1 day a week if I'm lucky.
In fairness to Shannon, she rolled me in the corner and left me there.
I mean, I don't want to close a school. I don't want to close 2 schools. But the fact is, my kids and my families, it's going to be me. Yeah, my families could go to Rushville. Rushville's closer than Brookville and Laurel or Connersville. But it's going to take me selling it to my families, saying, you have to trust me and what I have done in the last 3 years in this building to make it work. And I don't mean to sound like I'm preaching, but it doesn't matter. My daughter's going to do it. It doesn't matter where my kids and their grandkids. It's not going to be Morristown, because Morristown's always going to suck to them. Sorry. But they are. Just like Indian Creek is terrible for me. It's where I lived, it's where my educational background is. It doesn't matter what you put there, I'm never gonna praise it.
I think a no decision is the worst thing we could do.
Amen.
If I can just piggyback really quick,
No. Just kidding, go ahead.
I know it's really hard sitting at the board right now. You guys have seen our finances do nothing but go up over the last couple years, and I will say that is solely based on two things: COVID and the work that the administration has done. Because of the grants that we've received. But we are seeing, like this current year, we saw a loss of 80 kids, and we saw new funding that we barely even were able to be in the positive this next year. That's obviously not going to continue with the decline in enrollment that he's predicting. And with that, Kevin, you say, you don't want to cut, and I agree. I mean, I would love to be able to spend as much of the money that we've been able to save, but we have to think about these future years, and we have to put in place everything that is best for the students. And when looking at the inequalities of education, sometimes, and I apologize, I'm going to say it, closing the buildings is actually what's best, because then they are able to be in one place and we are able to offer the best education for these kids across the board. I feel like that's the common opinion here. But with that, sometimes you have to make things a little harder to make things better. And unfortunately, we've been doing that for the last few years, and now it's time to.
I will clarify again on the
rebuild.
cutting. I'm not saying don't try to cut the fat or spend less, but I don't want it to be at the detriment of the kids or the school losing something or
Absolutely.
diminishing something.
Mm-hmm.
If you can save money but keep the same benefits or better or whatever.
Has anybody looked at what the projected loss of students is gonna be if we consolidate?
We haven't now asked that question of our parents.
I do see this.
Look at where I am, out in Mount Carmel, where the rich farmers are. I mean, my families, I'm gonna be honest, my families are probably not gonna come to Brookville. I mean,
My opinion, and I have nothing to back this up, my opinion, you're gonna lose 50, if you close both those schools, you're losing 50%,
at least.
easily.
At least. When we consolidated the middle schools, I mean, look at the number of families we lost. We lost them to Sunland.
Will some come back? Possibly.
We lost them
Yeah.
various places. I mean, there's nothing in Brookville to bring them here. Because my families are working at GE, P&G, all the places in Cincinnati. I'm 7.5 miles from 74. So my families are coming from Cincinnati, and they're gonna shoot straight up 74 to North Dearborn to pick up their kids or attend a school program or, whatever.
I understand what you're
So-
saying, Beth, but when does the conversation switch to be about the kids that are gonna stay here and us
Yeah.
providing the
I get
best
that.
possible education that we can?
Can-
Because
we don't
we're
have-
not doing that.
If we don't close, are we gonna go broke?
Yes.
Yes.
That's the question.
Yes.
So we have to do something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that the
Yes.
bottom line?
Yes.
And
That's,
we're not gonna do it by
that's
continuing
about
to
the
cut.
bottom
Yes.
line.
Well, now,
When you
there's
say
some
that-
variables there, but the direction the trends point and have continuously pointed over at least the last 10 years is we can't survive with our current system.
I'd like to say something. I don't know, you all know that I've been in athletics. You know all we did with the football field over there. I have never seen a bunch of happy kids that first night when they are so proud of that field, not just because of athletics. This is what I'm envisioning. Bring these elementary kids together and let's have a huge, new, beautiful reading center that we all need to read. And these kids get excited about reading and they want to go to something new and they're proud of. Just a thought.
Well, you
And
better
just-
speak,
just-
Shan, before your relief valve kicks out.
Just one quick question. And it has gone around between all of us many, many times. I think every meeting that we have here, it's been, how are we going to protect those that are in the classroom? And because of my personality, that's the first thing. It's like, okay, what's going to happen to Mrs. New? What's going to happen to Mrs. Lakes? And it goes down the load. It goes down the list because I've been in that position when I was teaching. What's going to happen to my position? So I know what you're thinking, I think, because I've thought that. Where am I going to be and where's my paycheck going to be next? But, and not putting this on you in a bad way at all, and Miss Shannon, I appreciate everything you said. I know that you went out there and tried to convince students to come back. With my friends that had gone ahead and decided after COVID, I'm going to continue homeschooling, I'm going to go through virtual, and I'm going, why? Why? Why not come back and give yourself just a little more support? But I know what you're saying. Some of them because it's easier, some of them because they are working in these areas. It's easier to have their children doing this. But if you were in our position, Shannon, if you were on the board and you weren't a principal, what would you say at this moment? What would your heart tell me to do? Yes, ma'am, I do. I need you
I'm
to.
afraid, but go
A year
ahead.
ago, almost exactly to the day, another board member asked me if I'd still feel the same as I feel right now if Laurel was closed. And I've thought about that every day probably since I took this job. I, unlike 90% of the people in this county, have had the opportunity to draw that depending on the day. And, Pam, that's mother, is on the third generation of families, and I've had one contact me in the last 27 years I've taught. So there are days that I wish I'd been here forever, and there are days that I've been outside. If I was sitting in your place, I'd vote to vote one building. As much as that would kill me, as many tears as I would cry, I've seen the developmental and economic drawbacks in Warren Township and in Nineveh, Hensley, Jackson, or in Edinburgh. I have watched, I have an economics teacher for a father who spent 40 years in the classroom, so 10 Stoffel's pretty much all I learned. I know economics, and if you want to be successful, and again, it's going to hurt for 5 years, it's going to be painful, it's going to take the people sitting in this audience to keep you alive and not to lose it. But if you were asking me if I was sitting on the board today, what would my vote be? I'd do an amazing pre-K through 5 building, 6, 7, and 8 middle school, 9, 12. I put us all in one place because at the end of the day, the Mount Carmel parents, and she's probably never going to speak to me after this meeting, the Mount Carmel parents are going to provide their kids with an amazing education. They're good parents. They know the favorite saying at Laurel is that parenting's a verb. They're going to make sure, whether it's in Franklin County or whatever all counties are out there, because I'm not from here, I don't know. They're going to make sure that their children are successful. Laurel parents don't care because they're living from one day to the next, from 77% poverty. They're going to go with the bus that picks them up and sends them to the school. Are they going to run their mouths on Laurel chatter and Metamora chatter? Yes. But at the end of the day, the bus that drives by their house is where they're going to send their kids because they have other problems. Kids aren't kids, and the problems that my kids face aren't the same as the problems of it. So, I don't want to close because it'll be a huge, huge detriment to my community, and I love my community, but the best thing y'all can do is put us in one place because that's the only way it's going to be fair for kids. And I don't care, sorry, I respect all of you, but I'm here for children, not for you.
So the whole put them all in one place, grandiose school, that's great. My question is that going to keep those kids here, or are we still going to be losing kids over time? Is that going to fix the problem?
It's not going to matter because if you look at the model he provided.
Or this, I get it. If we look at every option and the only option is to close schools, or that ends up being the best option, I get it. But again, looking at, so we're at 1955 enrollment, and rough math, looking at it age-wise, we're at about 72% of what we should have, or the kids that live in the district. If we improve things, and I'm sorry, do the lights need to be replaced to save money? Yes, but that's not going to bring kids back. I get making those cuts. But let's say we find ways to attract those kids back and we get half of them back. Now we're up to 2,300. What do the projections look like then? And I'm not calling you out, you're the numbers person. What do the projections look like then if we get 400 kids back? And then maybe that continues going, and now we draw more people because we have people, sorry, but people die. Now we have people dying and dropping, and we have more houses available as he's forecasting the student population going up. So we could get ahead of this and see a positive instead of just saying,
Okay.
nope, we got to cut it off.
Again, though, I posed to you, what vehicle are you going to use to improve that? That's what we do.
I don't think it's one thing. And
Okay,
I
so
don't
tell us
know.
what
I would say the
things
same
that you
thing
know.
Mr. Bundy said. You know, it's not, we haven't sat down and had a big collective discussion about what we could do to move in that
Thought
direction
was our
instead of moving this
executive
direction.
session about.
Huh?
I think with the principals making phone calls to every family within their district to ask them, please come back, that right there is a push. I think at this moment, and no, I don't want to close a school any more than anyone else does, but I want to preserve the school system that we have. And if it means bringing them in because we're out of time, then work on the push afterwards when we have the whole collective group in one spot. I don't think that we have the time to be able to say, well, let's do a fundraiser and see if we can bring more kids in. That's not going to happen. But they've already done everything for us by calling the families.
I agree there. My worry there would be the areas that we're not serving that are so far away. They do have the option to take the ride into Brookville, but we know they're just gonna kind of disappear. They're gonna go off and be absorbed into the neighboring counties. That would be my fear. What I was hoping to gather a bit more of, and maybe I can follow up with him on, is like thinking about, is there one area that is our blood supply that's gonna be growing more? And he kind of alluded to that, like with the older people, older population, maybe that turnover. Something like that would be the focus to me, but I don't want to shoot ourselves in the foot by closing any one area or another and then saying there's a whole bunch of people out there that just got absorbed. In my case, because I'm on the Mount Carmel side, by Dearborn County, they're all over at North Dearborn now, and there's a whole bunch there. That would be my worry. Not that I'm fighting saying any of this is right or wrong. These are just my thoughts of doing the best for the county.
What if we do make the change and we don't lose them?
Great, super. But I mean, we don't know that. That's ideal.
Yeah.
But we already know, like even with the consolidation of 7th and 8th grade, we lost a lot of families then. We could see that. They did not show up at the middle school.
Sure.
They still lived down the road, but they were gone. I think you're always, and this is outsider looking in, but when you have small town people, small town community, everybody lives here, they grow up here, they stay here, you're always going to have someone rubbed wrong, and I got to leave my town. I've been here my whole life, I got to go. So I think we're always going to have those people who say, I got to go, I don't want to be here. I don't know that we're attracting a lot more people. Like to Beth's point, there's just not a lot here. There's no jobs, there's no shopping. There's nothing here that people come except to vacation and camp and vote. So
Hopefully, economic development gets better down the road.
I would love to just see
can attract them.
a campaign, a billboard, most credits, dual credits offered, whatever. I mean, something as simple as that sounds simple to me. Probably takes a lot more than I realized, but I would love to push.
We've done that, so we compiled more data than I've ever seen in my life. We sat down and we did every dual credit. We did the fact that we have more dual credits. We got early college endorsed. We made pamphlets to put in every single realtor's mailbox that they took to all these families coming in. We have promoted so much of the school, and I get what you're asking. What else do you want us to do?
I'd love to see it out there, and that's not probably on you guys. I think you all have done phenomenal at doing that. But put it out there. Put it out there to the realtors. I mean, even there's a lane with 30 lots on it. Who's buying those lots? I don't know. We gotta ask Brian Metz probably that. But who's buying them? Who's building? Push it out there to the realtors.
Whitney, sorry, go ahead, Kendra.
Well, okay, so kind of going off the advertisement for a minute, and you talk about, like, what if we shoot ourselves in the foot by building a new building. Unfortunately, Mount Carmel and Laurel are sitting at 25% capacity. I don't think we're ever going to see 500 kids come back into those buildings each.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I saw your hand up a minute ago. I'm sorry.
My watch said my heart rate. In my household, I have a hard time waiting my turn. I always walk when I want.
What?
You're waiting patiently, my heart rate's going up.
I apologize, I did see your hand a minute ago and I forgot.
It's okay. And I don't know if this makes sense to anybody, but when I look at enrollment, I see the whole district. I don't see it by this is Laurel. She's behind that post. This is Brookville.
She can't hear you. Can you, because
I'm
you're
sorry, Brittany,
behind
because you're
that.
behind the post. And we have the best bus drivers everywhere. I can only give you one.
But when I think of enrollment, I see the whole county, because we have kids all the way out in Andersonville, all the way in New Trenton, coming to Brookville. And then you look at Laurel Elementary, and you look at Mount Carmel Elementary, both of them housing, 200 students each out of the 1,900. I would like to know, but at least a quarter, if not half, of those families in both of those schools also have older kids already coming into Brookville. I don't think moving it all to one building is going to change as many minds as we may think, because there's already so many already coming in from out there. The ones maybe where those elementary kids are their oldest child, maybe those are the ones that are going to leave, but we're talking 200 each. I don't think we're going to lose more than half, if that, from each building if we made it all one. Only because they're already planning on coming here in the next few years anyways. Why not move them here sooner, give them a better opportunity right now, instead of hoping that we're going to get more enrollment out there when clearly we saw nobody's moving to Mount Carmel for quite some time, unless a lot of houses go up, but we're not seeing that over the next decade.
We've had a lot of houses recently even, and I mean, the thing is, when you give them the choice, you're giving them the choice and they stop and think about it.
But with
I think
that,
that's
and
the
I'm trying
issue.
to see the brighter side of everything, but with that, a lot of the people buying these newer houses most likely don't have a family yet, so we still have to wait 5 years to get those kids.
There's kids I even like the Strohmeyer Estate comes to mind because that was one of the orphan areas that didn't work out. There's not,
Operate that building.
but there's not 500 kids on that street,
Right.
but there are a lot of families there. Some of them go to St. Michael's, some of them, heck,
Well,
one of them, they go into Cincinnati. I
see
mean,
the bigger
it's,
picture too with
yeah.
saving some money. If we all came to one place, we could save even more money in transportation.
well,
have
you would
so
still
many
have to go
routes.
get them.
But not as many.
Right. I'm
We
just
have
saying you might have
multiple
one bus
routes.
going all the way out to Carolina Trace where there's
could you imagine-
houses being built every day.
In the mornings, they all ride the same bus. In the afternoons, they don't.
Right.
Because the elementary gets out before the middle school and high school. We could eliminate almost half of those routes because they would all go home at the same time too, from the same
Right.
place to the same place.
Right.
Rather than having an elementary route with a possible transfer, and then a high school route going to the same place. A whole other bus, and these buses are getting to be $140,000 each. Contractors aren't going to be getting cheaper. And all of our routes almost, at least 3/4 of them are contracted routes. And we're gonna pay them to do it at cost plus a profit, where if we could do it at cost through the corporation, we could save even more, but we can't afford to do that with how large our county is, and if we were all within one, we could get closer to that edge where we're not paying an immense amount of money to contractors. We can gain more corporation routes, less contracted routes, less miles being ran per day, because buses wouldn't have to run 3 different routes. They could do one morning, one afternoon, all kids at the same time.
Right. And that makes sense. The big takeaway for me with elementary kids being 7 minutes from home instead of 30 is that my middle schooler, she has a cell phone, I can track her. My 3rd grader does not.
Right.
She cannot advocate for herself as well. She doesn't know the way home. Things like that. I want to go to the Halloween party. I want to go to the Christmas party at the 7 minutes. If she's sick, little kids are sick more. I don't want to drive an hour there and back. Those are some of the things as a parent that we think about, why we want the elementary closer. That's just from the parent perspective. I'm not arguing it's right or wrong.
I get that,
That's what
because
people
that's why
think.
I enjoy working for the school.
Yeah.
I'm 5 minutes away from my kids. Not all
parents have that luxury where they work in the same town their kid goes to school.
Right.
And not all of them are stay-at-home parents. My husband works in Cincinnati, so if, for whatever reason, I didn't work here in Brookville, no matter where I lived and what school my kid went to, I'm not gonna be 7 minutes away from them.
Right. I
No
mean, and
matter
that's,
where they go to
that's
school.
just I think that's just the parent perspective of it. That's why they like their younger kids closer. Even though I've got a kid going into Brookville, I know my third grade will be there eventually. That's fine. I'm not even so super duper worried about sending her there now because she's got a pretty big mouth on her. I feel like she would speak up if something was wrong. But there's a lot of kids who they don't even know how to get to Brookville and back. They don't know what bus they're on. You know, it's just little things that I think the parents worry about. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying when you give them the option, they decide. Parents will or even will just stick it to them because I'm mad because you closed my school and I'm going to go over here now. I heard that with the 7th and 8th grade consolidation. And I'm like, well, you're still switching schools. Are you winning? You're not
Then it
winning.
contradicts the facts where they wanted to be close to home. Like, go ahead and switch schools.
Well, they're closer. So it is, some of those schools are closer to us than Brookville is. Yeah. So on that side it is. I'm just saying that's where I do feel we would lose some families to it. It's just further away and they don't go that way. Like I can go to a lot of other places and it's on my way to work. Or a lot of the families I'll say, I don't go into work every day, but when I did, a lot of parents are working remotely too, like I do. But a lot of people aren't driving into Brookville. They're not coming here to work. It's out of the way. So that's parent thoughts.
I do see loss in students. It's gonna happen if
Yeah.
that's what's done. It will happen. I just don't think it's gonna be as bad as we're afraid it will be.
Those are just some
But
of the
I
parent
can't
thoughts.
guarantee it.
I've got to share because that's what I hear. Yeah.
I think with what our principals have shared with us, and we've all asked, what can we do? What can we do? What will make it better? I think that they're going to make it better. I think that when it is consolidated and they know that we have to make it better, that we're going to have better programs to offer. And I do believe that a lot of parents will continue to drive in because you want to see your children succeed and you want to see what programs they're in. And we have phenomenal programs as it is. We do have a good sports program. We have great facilities. We have a wonderful music suite. And if you have not toured it, you need to. It's phenomenal. We have great dual credits. The parents will come to where their children are. They will continue to drive in. This is a parent that still follows her daughter around whenever she's conducting. Sorry.
I've spoken,
The question is, if we decided to close buildings and come to one campus, is our only fear of losing students?
I have a
Is there
lot
more
of,
reasons?
my other issue would be
I feel like there's more
the
pros than cons.
I feel like the town is too small. The infrastructure is small here. Those are some of my thoughts. I mean, even on 101, I guess it is right there. That's dangerous. Oxford Pike, there's 3 small
Traffic.
1-lane bridges. I mean, just there's a lot of reasons to me that stick out that I'm like, whoa, dude, this is concerning. I don't know how that we can fix it all. I know we can fix some of the traffic flow.
I
But
think
Jessica,
traffic would definitely
yeah.
have, there would have to be
That's
more
an
than
issue.
what there is now, because that is a disaster. Sorry, but it is.
The
There
traffic,
needs to be more than one way in.
Yes, yes.
for a safety issue too. I mean, I know it's, like Shannon had mentioned, keeping the kids safer because they're all here. The other side of the coin there is, to me, they're all sitting ducks. They're back in one spot for whatever person
Jessica
thinks
and
I'm
Brandy,
next.
excuse me just a minute. I want Tammy to hit on 2 of the things that you were talking about. Number 1, all of us in one place, and number 2 are roads leading to the campus now.
Go ahead, Tammy.
I put her on the spot again.
I mean, obviously, when
Would you
we
do
spoke
that,
about the
please?
master plan, that is a charge of that. Can it be resolved? I don't know. They've already started looking at it, and it's going to be challenging. Whether you come in Brookville Elementary and you keep going and you make another road and you can try to make a loop around. So they're looking at it. That's going to be a major roadblock for us. But it is being looked at as a consideration, yes. If and when they present that master plan, that has to be in it, in my opinion.
as administrators, how many hours do you guys put in a week on average? No, I'm curious.
80.
14-hour day.
Yeah, Jill
I
works
have double
too.
pneumonia too because of this news. I mean,
Sorry, Jill.
That's
Had
my
to do it.
choice, because, I mean, Beth has a son at home.
Is that why Jill's leaning up?
They work as many hours as it takes to get the job done, and that's gonna differ
Yeah.
weekly, nightly, like tonight. I mean, we walked in here at 7:30 this morning, and it's 8 o'clock, you know. So, yes, there are days, and Monday night was one of them, there are days where it's longer, and there are days where it's not, but they work until it's done.
See, I guess the point to my question is, we're asking a lot of you right now.
Facebook messages.
Yeah.
Well, Whitney, we know you're vacation.
I'm still in a meeting.
Try and call.
I have a couple questions for different people. Whitney, if you don't know the answer, it's fine.
Bye.
How many students are taking dual credits?
Oh, lots. So we are, almost every kid has to now. So every kid is going to be not forced, but they have to, because we now have.
I don't
They're
understand.
not forced. I don't want to say this, they are not forced, they don't have to, but if they don't take them, at some
They don't
point,
get the
they are not
diploma
going
they
to get a diploma now.
Right.
So every kid has to hit a pathway. Within those pathways, we are so highly credentialed and have so many teachers that have went to get their certification to teach dual credit, that those classes are now dual credit certified. If they don't complete a 3-course sequence that includes dual credit classes, they no longer can graduate from an Indiana high school.
Okay, so let me see if I understand. So basically, some of the gen ed classes are dual credit now, so they're pretty much forced to take one.
They have to graduate.
Okay.
Yes.
So this is going to sound like a bad question,
Sure.
and I'll apologize ahead of time, but is that making the class harder to where some of the kids aren't doing well?
So we talked about those lower scale students. So
Right.
we've had this discussion numerous times. Now, when you have students who maybe aren't hitting that caliber of dual credit, could we take a teacher and teach one for dual credit and one for non-dual credit? Because you can do that. So we could teach principals of ag for dual credit and one not for dual credit. So far, that freshman class is your first class that's having to hit that 3-course sequence, freshmen, sophomores, some juniors as well. But they basically, what we have said is if we're seeing a roadblock here, what are ways that we can adapt to that? And the way to adapt is to have a teacher teach it non-dual credit, and that's the only way to adapt to it, because the state has put in these rules. This is all this is across the state of Indiana.
Put in the rules that they have to take the dual
They have
credit
to take
class?
a
They have to,
pathway,
right,
which
okay.
is a 3-course sequence.
But I'm
and the
saying we've
majority of
gotten to a
them-
point where we have so many classes that are dual credit, that is their only option, is they have to take one.
Not necessarily. So what we're doing now is we're also trying to put in a music pathway. We're trying to put in an art pathway. We are trying, I think we're adopting a music pathway for next year.
Yes.
So we are trying to hit the different avenues, but I'll be honest, some of the dual credits, depending on their field, are easier than others. So what we do is if we see a student who struggles academically, we're catching them in 8th grade and saying, hey, this pathway might be your best chance to graduate. So we're kind of guiding them based on their middle school criteria, or their middle school grades.
But if they attend vocational school, that still
counts. And that's
cancels
dual
out
credit
that,
as well.
but it cancels out them having to take those pathway
That is a
classes per se.
pathway.
Okay.
So the Career Center is a pathway, but your Career Center classes are all dual credit,
And they're not easy.
and they are not easy.
So
No.
let me ask you this. We have the dual credit. Are we letting quantity outweigh quality? Are we sacrificing basics for this?
I don't think so. If you were asking me, my answer is no, because that's like saying we're I wouldn't say this.
Watering it down to
Yeah,
get the
we're
kids
not.
through.
If you're going to the
No.
Career Center, that still has a bad connotation. People are like, I'm not sending my kids to vocational. That's not what vocational is anymore. It's not the kids who aren't going to
Never
college
was.
anymore. You know what I mean?
It's a trade school.
It is a trade school, and that's exactly what it is. But those are all dual credit, and we were having kids who come out of the middle school with F's and D's, and they're getting A's there in dual credit courses because it's hands-on. So it's about finding what the kids enjoy and do, and then they do well, regardless if it's dual credit or not.
Okay. Kind of on what you were saying about, do we really think people are going to leave because they have older kids in the system already? They're already accustomed to it. Just flipping through, and this is just looking at it face value, you can almost see a trend of you follow a class through enrollment going back to 2010, and you can see the enrollment stay steady, then they hit middle school and it drops. They tried because the elementary was easy because it was close, as Jessica alluded to. It's right in our backyard. That's the easiest thing for us to do. That's our hometown school. They get to middle school now, they have to travel into Brookville. They say, oh, we're going to go somewhere else, maybe to East Central because it's closer or something. Then they come back for a year or two, maybe. Some of them do. And then you can see it drop again, freshman and junior year, because, well, now the kid can drive. They can get themselves there. So again, just looking at it at face value, if we take away that option of that close local school, and again, if we have to, we have to. I understand that. But yes, I think we will lose some because they will lose that
Well,
option.
That was more
Let me
along the-
comment on that.
Yeah.
As a former high school principal, and when they get to, and Chris, you can back me up on this, they get to 7th, 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, those kids are in those parents' ears who don't want to be there. And hey, I want to do homeschool, I want to do homeschool. And the parents finally give in, and that's where you're losing them. And they go home and they have no accountability, no structure, and we lose them. And it's the worst thing for society.
And the state,
and welfare,
the state don't care about
and the
that yet.
future is going to be awful.
Elementary schools is only the fear of losing those elementary students. The middle school and high school won't change. They will change in upcoming years because those are the elementary kids that are being affected now. But most families who have their kids enrolled at Franklin County, no matter what school it is, they know by 7th grade, they're gonna probably go to the middle school here in Brookville. Unless they already had planned on moving out regardless of,
I'm not talking about moving out.
or, I mean, like moving to a different school, like sending them somewhere else, but I don't think, that can happen, any middle schooler and high schooler can go anywhere right now if they wanted to.
Right.
But if we closed elementary schools and made one, I don't think we'll see a change in middle school and high school enrollment, it'll just be the elementary. But most elementary parents, like if I lived out in Laurel or Mount Carmel, I wouldn't plan on moving in the future anytime soon. I know in the next 5 years, my child will then be going to the middle school. I feel like, I can't speak for Mount Carmel and Laurel parents because my child goes to Brookville. And I like the area that it's at. I mean, it's not right next to my house, but it's close to my work and I enjoy that. But regardless where I live, I know when my child gets into 6th grade, she's gonna be enrolled at the middle school, regardless of if the school was in another location prior. I knew that she was gonna go there, whether she was at Laurel or Mount Carmel and not Brookville.
Right, and that I get. I think the part for me that's probably more scary, and Tammy, you've mentioned this before, you may have to correct me. You said something along the lines of like Indiana's watching districts that are shrinking, certainly the ones that are under 2,000. So that was my thinking of, can we spare another 50, 100 kids again? We have so many kids that you don't know about because they're not on our radar because they don't go here.
Right.
Out in that area already. So it's really a problem already that they're going to St. Michael's. There's families that have 3 kids, and they go to 3 different schools, and they don't care because it's fine. You know, it's like they just send them 3 different places. Okay, fine. It is an option. It is happening already. And that's what I meant by, it would impact it. So if we can keep them really attracted, even just at Mount Carmel, was my thinking, they kind of buy in, they fall in love with us there. We know they'll go to Brookville when they're older, but if you don't put that right in their backyard now, it is just easier for them to say.
Or they're only going to Mount Carmel because it's in their backyard right now, and then when they get older, they're gonna go somewhere else
Maybe,
because it's
but hey, right now we got the ADM, we got the money and the head count, and it's helping. So that's part of the thinking of, even if that's what I meant kind of by like the shooting us in the foot,
But every day, we're bleeding money out that we can't get back.
We're running a deficit out there.
Yep. And it's gonna catch up.
Jessica, when we
And-
decided to bring the 7th and 8th graders in, the same thing, all the same things that you're saying, all the parents said the same thing.
Yeah.
And it's,
Not all of them
I
left, but some of them did.
pardon me?
I said, and not all of them left, but some of them definitely did.
Yeah. Well,
And
Yeah. and they're gone, and they're still not back.
Well, and some
So-
of your people out there too, not your people, but our people, whatever.
Well, Bess is off the board now.
She's off. But I mean, the Mount Carmel people, they decided that they were gonna go, East Central anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, because they had
There's
older
lots of
kids.
that. There's
Yeah.
some that go,
Yeah.
I'm telling you, there's a first grader, second grader I know, and they drive him all the way into North Bend Road.
Right, right.
Because they think he's gonna go to
Right.
LaSalle someday. You know,
Right,
it's like
right.
there's families
Well,
that are
and
doing all
there's-
kinds of
and
things
there's
out there.
people in Oxford that
Lot of
go to,
options.
go to the private schools in Cincinnati.
Mhm.
And every day they get, you know.
We've got kids that go into
Yeah.
Elder. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just an option is all I'm saying. I'm not fighting you.
It's a-
No,
It is an option.
I think this is important. I was going to borrow my wife's crystal ball, but her flying monkeys took that from me. So I couldn't have that. We don't know what individuals are going to. We can, I mean, you can survey, but that doesn't always mean that it's correct. And when it comes to the perception of the school, how many times have you left a restaurant and say, that's good, but you say that to the manager? Now, I guarantee you just about if you had a horrid experience, you're going to let them have it, aren't you? So we don't know what kind of responses we're going to get on the surveys. I think the people here, the administrators, you guys pour your hearts into it. You know, Mr. Bundy has probably the worst job of all of you because he's dealing with hormonal change. And there's nothing worse than that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, I better clarify, he's not going through hormonal change. That's the students. But the point being this is, the way a parent operates with their child is independent. If I would have gotten in trouble, my dad wouldn't even ask me my side of the story. I was going to get punished, which I deserve for something else normally, so I didn't mind. But the point being is, there are parents out there that said, my kid didn't do this, I'm not going to tolerate it. So they shipped their kid out. I mean, there's a ton of different things, and I think the relationship the elementary principals have with their community is outstanding. And I think Chris has a lot of things on his plate that makes it tough for him to do that. And then if he does his job, well, Miss South has an easier job too. So, but when we wanted to start a conversation, we don't know what we're going to do, but we have to discuss it and get to where we need to be. And, you know, if Kevin says, you know, I don't know what we're supposed to do, we need to think about that. We need to brainstorm. We need to talk about what is it that we can do differently. But it's got to happen fairly quickly because this thing is going down. And I don't want to be the person on top of the Titanic there. So, and I'm really glad you guys interchanged with us because it gives us a lot of insight from your aspect.
And Kevin, I probably should tell you this too. To get a doctor's note at a doctor's office is as easy as going in and buying a candy bar anymore. I could walk into an office right now and say that Collins has the worst anxiety I've ever seen, and I can send a note to Jill saying put her online because that doctor said so. We get more daily than you can even imagine. They're writing them like it's no other. So it's not, it's that simple. And I hate to say that, I've spoken this before, I think it's detrimental for 90% of those students. There's about 10% who probably do benefit from being online. But to get a script from a licensed doctor in town takes next to nothing. So these kids walk in and say, here, I get to go online, they smile, laugh, they go play their sports, and they do all their online work. And it's that simple. So I think that's something, when you're asking where things are going, that's another thing you guys should know is that easy to get.
Are you
Fighting
talking?
that battle because we don't have an online program.
We don't.
Right.
We're muddling through it, and if we don't do it, they're gonna go somewhere else.
If we don't do it, they're going to right
They're
up
going
to
to
East Central,
Union.
and East Central signing them right up for online,
Right.
and they're taking that student, they're
Right.
going to their athletics, because if we say no, it's that simple to go to any surrounding school to get it.
And we get 85%, right?
And at least we're getting some portion of funding. Is it a nightmare for us? It is, because about 90% of them come back eventually, because they realize this isn't working.
And further behind
And
academically.
they are further behind academically, yes. But it is, I'm not kidding right now, you could walk down and get a script that says you only have to work 50% of your time.
What doctor is it?
I'll give you my.
That doesn't apply to you.
So you think those are the transfers?
Oh, well, that's gotta be part of it, right? Are those part of it? Those have to go into the numbers somewhere. because
And
they are not-
where are they going to do online?
They're going through us, but they are not physically in our buildings.
But are
So
they
we're getting
still enrolled,
85%
they're still
money
enrolled
for
as
them.
your students?
Union and
classes,
Clarksdale are
same
good
full
examples.
credits,
We don't
same
get
everything.
away.
But it's
where-
not the same, so it all
No,
has to
'cause
be
they do
online, so it
Play-Doh.
is not, so our, let's say, English 9 does not line up with our English 9 online. They're completely separate things.
There's no writing.
No, there's no writing prompt, there's no anything. It's completely different, and these doctors are writing them for any parent who wants them.
You guys, the high school does have a tremendous amount of kids here recently. I will attest to that because I can't tell you, I mean, there's probably 5 of them that come to my house on a regular basis that are like, guess what, we're doing online. And Whitney is correct. They do laugh about it. And they're like, look what we did. We just went to the doctor. And it is sad.
It's sad.
Because my question to them is, you know, and I'm not saying anxiety and depression is not a real thing, but my question back to some of those kids are, if you're anxious and you're depressed, what good does staying at home every day by yourself do for that? And I do agree. It is a disservice to our students.
I just didn't know if those were calculated in the numbers.
We do have a couple of kids that are enrolled in Union that live in Franklin County. We
14.
do have that. Huh?
14 as of 2020.
14. So we do have kids living in Franklin County that are enrolled in Union taking online courses.
That was in 22.
And we even had the discussion, Kevin, at one point, okay, then let's tell them they can't do athletics. You can't cheerlead, you can't play football, you can't play basketball. Guess what they said? No problem, we're signing out and going to East Central, who will get us online and I'll play sports for them. So we had no choice at that point but to adapt. And this all happened with COVID. Had we not adapted to that, you were losing 100 more kids at that time.
Why do you think that they want that doctor's letter to go online? Just because of
They don't
freedom?
care, they're allowed, because at home they have free reins. They
Path
can
of
do
least
whatever they
resistance.
want at home. They can vape. They
Easy
can-
route.
No, it's real.
They can do literally whatever they want at home. So those are the kids we're seeing. We're seeing those kids who, in our building, they're like, I don't want to do the work. Well, we're forcing them to do the work, but they can go online and go at home and no one's yelling at them to do it.
So the online they're doing is just self-taught, looking at a screen. There's nobody watching them.
We have somebody watching them. So we have a teacher who sits, so basically they take the lessons themselves. When it comes to a master test, they have to video on, and then we can see exactly what they're in so that they don't cheat.
But
And that's the best we can do.
can they do that on their own time frame, or do they do that during a regular school day?
They can do basically the lesson work on their own time at any time, but any tests that are taken have to be done in a
Have to be
proctored in front of
proctored.
the teacher.
I was wondering, because there's a few of them that actually work too.
Yes, they do.
And carry full-time jobs. And so I was curious to how all that was playing.
So it's not actually an online class. It's just
No, it's
online,
online.
on-demand class.
It's called Admitum is our program. We call it Play-Doh. But the kids, it is all self-taught. It's on there, but like I could get on like Khan Academy if I didn't know how to do something. It could teach me how to do it if the lesson's not teaching you. There is not a physical teacher teaching you.
But they don't have to log in from 7 to 3. They
Correct.
can do it at midnight.
It's on
Yes.
demand.
Except for testing. Testing has to be done during certain hours when a teacher can monitor them. But that is happening every day. Like it is constant. And the doctors all around here are all writing them like it's nothing.
So again,
Where's the
we can see,
professionalism?
so again, we can see that the school is actually doing something, pushing through, trying to keep our students
Yes.
right here. And of the students at Mount Carmel and Miss Lakes, I'm so sorry. And I know that they are sweet, and you've got wonderful parents out there, and when you figure, okay, we're gonna say the average of 200 students in your building, then that's gonna be roughly 50 families, roughly, if we're taking that down. We might lose 50% of that. So we might lose 25 families. But that's just 25 families. Everyone else would still be.
I don't agree with just 25 families.
No. You understand what I'm saying?
I'm saying
going to
the
lose
25 count doesn't supersede what the end goal is. I understand
We're
that.
going to lose some families, no matter what we do. And it's not that you have not tried to keep them.
And that's, again, my question or concern is we closed or consolidated the middle school and we lost some. And our number, what year did we consolidate? 17. And we're
How many
still,
did we lose?
I don't know, but
How many families did we lose from consolidation?
anybody disagree that we lost some?
Sure you, yeah.
Totally
Okay,
lost
so we
some.
lost some. Our enrollment is still going down for whatever, regardless of what the reason is. My concern is we consolidate everything now, but our enrollment still keeps going down. Are we actually, is there a problem that we need to fix and are we addressing it and fixing it?
Families
Or
need
are
to
we
have
just
more
going
children.
to put them together
Here's the
and then eventually we're
problem.
gonna have this same conversation or 10 other people are gonna have the same conversation?
You heard
just-
it's the
presented
problem
what
in
the
all
problem
rural
was.
Indiana.
Yes.
The society
He
kids
just
now
he just
want to
stood
go
up
out
there for
to
an
eat every
hour.
night someplace close. Well, let's move over to Carmel, Fishers. That's why that area is growing, because they have all these things to do. That's what they've grown up. But we grew up eating at home with the home cooked meal. They grow up
Fast food.
fast food, Grubhub, things there.
Yep.
The point is, there's
And
a
that's where they
diminished
want to
pool.
be. They don't want to be in rural Indiana.
Whereas
That's their-
before,
But I
there was a 8 foot deep pool, it's now 4 feet deep. And we can only attract so much of that water. And are we losing students? Sure. He said 400. But if you compared it to what Connorsville or anyone else had lost, he said they're interchangeable. It's pretty much even across the board. So if we do something better to pull them in, that's great. But we need to know what it is we can do and act upon it. And a lot of times, these ideas don't affect until years down the road from generational. When they consolidated the middle school, there was a big outcry. Now, Chris, do you hear any of that outcry now? It's just they go to middle school.
I have-
Losing kids, you're still gonna lose them no matter what, but you're also losing more money regardless.
That's my thing.
What'd you say?
I mean, you know,
Losing
we
more money.
are,
Can't keep losing money.
But
We
we
are
have to comp
losing-
that off of what the maintenance and overhead of the building and salaries of what we're consolidating are.
And
Are we
that's-
losing money, or are we losing students and making it to where we can right the ship with money? That's the question we need to ask.
Well, I have one more comment, and this might help you, Kevin. Look, IHSAA reclassifies sports every 2 or 3 years. I think they got off schedule because of COVID. Help me out, Mr. Isaacs. But every year, they go into each school, and you may move from a classification because your students, you don't have the students, I think it's male freshmen, is that how they
It's
classify?
all of them now.
Yeah. Oh, is it all of them? Okay, so you might look that up on IHSA.org because they just reclassified this year and see how many schools dropped classes.
Down a class, yeah.
It's
Well, it
amazing.
also put in perspective, Centerville came up into our class.
Exactly.
And now, their enrollment is less than what it was when they were a low 2A.
Right.
And now they're 3A because of all the other schools.
Well,
And then you got the big donuts that
I'm
are huge.
yeah, and then
It's just
Lawrenceburg's the
this-
same way.
Because it's a rural school.
Lawrenceburg's
I'm
the
going to
same way.
close out the meeting if
Good.
there's
Gotta
no
go.
objections, because
I'm not done
I think
talking.
we're spinning our wheels a little bit. But we are at least talking about what we need to do, and that's the important thing. Thank you all for showing up. Well, Jill, maybe.
Before you close out, if I hurt your feelings because I said we would lose students or lose families,
No, you said
I
just.
apologize.
Just.
No,
25
it's
families.
not that. I know it's gonna happen. This is the hardest decision we've ever.
I agree, I agree. It's, I don't want to think any family that
Open
they're
enrollment
just
to our
a family.
advantage instead of our disadvantage.
Okay, our
What you're
meeting is
talking
adjourned.
about.
Thank you all.
Thank
How do we
you,
attract
thank you,
that?
thank you.
And kick
That's
me
where I
and
think
go
the
out.
perception
Maybe I'll
is.
lose a leg.
See you.
Thank
You
you.
walk